Oh, hey guys, welcome to Redline Motorsports. Today we have the NSX Honda Cup. We are at round 2 Zolder. This is the Pro Split. So we have the Pro Split today, we've got the Pro-Am tomorrow, and next Monday we have the Am Split. This is a bi-weekly championship for 4 weeks running. So they've got 4 rounds. So today we are at Zolder, and it is looking lovely for Belgian weather, nice and wet. I also got today with me Mike Jones. How are we doing, Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Simon. It was an awesome race last week, or 2 weeks ago, rather, at Suzuka, and I am looking forward to this race at Zolder today. Obviously, as you said, it is raining out there. These guys in this Honda gonna have to be extra careful. It's been interesting watching them practice.
Absolutely, it sure has. Yeah, I've also got George Smith in the comm box. How are we doing, George? Also known as G-Max.
How's it, Simon? Always good to be here with you. And as Mike had said there, excited to be at Zolder and excited to be here in the rain.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have Thomas Crabb with us today. How are we doing, Thomas?
Doing absolutely fantastic, enjoying the British summer weather. Not like Belgium is doing much in the game right now. But as the other two have said, it's a nice rainy race, and let's hope it continues. I'd like to see a bit of a spanner in the works, and Zolder's a very technical and old school circuit, so puts a lot of these pro drivers to the test.
Absolutely. So I will leave you guys to Mike Jones today, and I'm going to be your cameraman, so the rest of them will be your commentators for today's race. So good luck, guys, and I'll see you the other side.
Yeah, much appreciated, Simon. Always bringing us these awesome camera angles. One of our many streamers here at RLM. You'll notice Simon, Ryan, and Nick, kind of our main streamers recently, setting up all these camera shots for us and bringing us the stream here as Darren King hops over a bit of a curb there. I'm surprised he held on to that, George, with this rain. These curbs are deadly.
Yeah, you've got 2 chicanes to navigate here at Zolder, and they space just a couple of 100 meters apart from one another, and neither of which are going to be very lenient on being used too much, especially here in the rain. You see King just struggling for grip as well. He's going to be squirreling and squiggling at the wheel, trying to keep the Honda pointed in the right direction. And of course, here at Zolder, it's very difficult to maintain pace if you've got a whole bunch of cars in front of you. Normally, now they've got to contest with getting a bit of spray kicked up in their point of view too.
Yeah, you know, it's not raining too hard. You know, it is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is damp on the track at the moment. Oh, actually, it is currently ticked over to wet. It was damp earlier. So I'm curious to see, you know, of course, with a little bit of randomness in weather here, we could see it go dry. We could see it go damp. We could see it even start raining harder as we switch over to qualifying here. You'll notice 31 minutes left on practice. That is actually a misnomer. It will be 60 seconds left on practice. The session will be forwarded to qualifying, so we will get into qualifying here shortly. But Thomas, I'm curious. Zolder, like George said, it's a very technical track, right? What do you think the trick is going to be here? Assuming that we stay wet weather, what do you think the trick is here for these guys today?
I think even though it's in our race, the trick is to try and be as consistent as possible. The track is going to change, the driving lines are going to change. If we're going to see drivers take wet lines, as we actually watch King go off the track there, he actually, I think, loses it on one of the easier parts of the circuit, going downhill there. with the left-hander, you're normally flat out on that part of the circuit as we are right on board with Honzik now as he actually practices his pit entry, as there is a mandatory pit stop. They don't have to take fuel or tires. A bit of fuel is recommended just to make sure it does tick over correctly, but nothing is mandatory as we go over to practice. But as you're saying, and it's actually gone dry for qualifying, but even in the dry, this track requires a lot of consistency. The track braking zones changes rapidly, even throughout half an hour of the first half of the race. The braking zones will decrease from the 100 or so meters to 80. It'll get smaller and smaller, trying not to crash into the guy in front of you. One thing that I would like to point out with this track is it is a lot narrower than the other tracks in the game. The pro drivers are going to have to be a little more aggressive with their overtakes. Not that they are too kind on their overtakes to begin with, they'll probably be a lot more aggressive as we actually ride on board with Zeman pulling out of the pits and being the first guy in the multi-21 racing car to start on his outlap and onto his flying lap. He's going to be quite happy that he has got open ground in front of him. But now we can watch them attack the curbs, go slightly harder on the acceleration pedal, the throttle pedal. I forgot what the throttle pedal was there for a second.
It's the one on the right.
Yeah, as an esports vehicle commentator, I've forgotten what the pedals are, even though I've been driving for the last 6 years. But no, it is the throttle pedal they'll be using a little bit harder. I wonder if any drivers would be changing their setup with a bit of practice in the wet. I wonder if any of them have made any major changes and then all of a sudden it's now dry. But what do you guys expect? What times are we expecting from these guys? How close do you think we're going to get?
You know, so I mean, close. How close are we going to get? Oh, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely just close all across the board. I mean, we saw that last week at Suzuka where we just had so much of the grid within a second of each other, even within a half second of each other. Of course, Jardier coming home with the pole, if I'm not mistaken. Jardier came across with that. But today at Zolder, with it being dry, track currently in optimum conditions, I would not be surprised to see these guys dip into the 28s at the absolute fastest. It'd be a blazing lap. I would not be surprised to see those guys do that as we're watching Zeman here, George, come across his first flying lap.
Yeah, and this is definitely a part of the circuit that can make or break those lap times that you will be chasing down. You want to carry as much speed through the double right-hander as you can, chasing down the little straight section that you have before diving onto the brakes and then going over through the first chicane. Using plenty of curbs here, Zeman feeling comfortable in that NSX, feeling like he can take curbings for dinner and get away with it. So it's definitely an easier place to do so in the dry. And the second chicane is definitely a lot flatter, a lot more lenient. And then this section of the track as well is, again, somewhere that you just have to make sure that you get that inside apex so you can carry as much speed as you can. You do not want to be lifting through here. And then the hairpin is just the weirdest part on the track for me. I feel like it just breaks up all the consistency, and you can just see how difficult it is to get the car around and carry as much speed as you can. Of course, carrying speed is everything in circuit racing, and you've just got one final section to do, and that's, of course, the final chicane, as Zeman here will be crossing over to set our first lap time at Zolder. That will be up there for the rest to chase down. Zeman going to cross the line and do a 1:31.6 to begin with.
Yeah, so not quite on that mark that I was saying earlier, but of course we did see him struggle just a little bit, and I'm going to be honest with this Honda, having driven it around a little bit as I am in the Pro-Am section of this race, him hitting that first curb in the first chicane, every time I do that, I seem to lose like 3/4 of a second. So this chicane he's going to be coming up to here, you'll notice it is such a high curb. Like George was saying, the second one very flat. This first one is very, very high, and this Honda just likes to bounce off of it. You'll notice he kind of clips it just a little bit, but he shouldn't lose quite as much speed with that. You'll notice across the board here, Zeman actually placed the lowest or the slowest possible time that is posted at the moment. Urbich and now Ruby's posting a faster lap, and there is now a faster lap on top of it as well. Of course, Jardier popping off in first place, the 29.3, so wouldn't be surprised to see him do this. But Zeman, however, so far 4/10 up, so he is not gaining a whole ton of time on this lap. He lost a lot of time looking like in sector 1 throughout sector 2. He's now 6/10 up, so he's definitely picking up time here in sector 3. This may push him up to maybe about a second or so if he can make this last corner work. He's now 9/10 up, coming out of the final corner, going to come across the timing line here shortly. And if he goes up a second, that's going to put him up at least into the top 10. And it's going to put him in 10th place. So a much better lap, though still a lot left to gain there, about 1.2 off the leader. And now we're going to switch over to Vincent Airbeach, and he is actually looking like a potential pole sitter here. Provisionally, he is 4/10 up as he's going to be coming into the final chicane. Manu just posted a 28.9, so that will bring up the bar a little bit. Vincent not quite at that rank, but he is coming up 4/10. He lost a 10th coming out of that corner, but it should pick him up at least a position. And there he is, 5/10 off. And there's that 28 I was looking at. Manu, an excellent lap by him. Multiple cars up, though, still. Jardier not giving up, of course. Ruby's posted the second place, but Jardier now 5/10 up. And, I think he just posted, yeah, there he is at a 28.8. And as we would expect from Jardier every day, George, this man is just a hot lapper. Don't take me wrong, he's good in the race, but he's just unparalleled in hot lapping.
Yeah, he's definitely a name to watch out for, and it doesn't matter what car or what class he gets thrown into. He has a point to prove, and it doesn't matter how the race goes. He always wants to do well there. But you do see him chasing down the pole hot laps and not proving us wrong there, doing a 128.8. So those 128s definitely there and possible as we ride on board with the number 818 as he tries to better his lap time. Currently sitting in 7th place, 1 second off the pace, and it's not a bad place to be starting in the mid-pack here. There's plenty of time to make up positions with other cars jostling around in the first couple of laps. So, I don't feel that starting in the mid-pack is the worst place at Zolder, but at the same time, you don't want to start right at the back because I feel that, trying to get through the entire field is quite a feat.
And something else to mention here about that, George, about the starting in the mid-pack is Thomas, you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this track is very interesting in terms of overtaking or subsequently not being able to overtake. How's your experience at this track with being able to overtake consistently?
Personally, I have always preferred the American old school tracks and the European old school tracks. I can always find a way of intimidating the car ahead to give me that position by pushing him just a little bit further so he hits those really high curves, and that can cause the car to literally take off on the ground, as we've just seen Airbeach actually go past one of the chicanes that I want to mention. Is if you can get a guy to brake a little bit later and he takes off, then he has no speed then and possibly a little bit of damage to his own car, and you can quite easily get past because the runoff area for that, I mean the width of the track is quite large and they'll end up on the inside. So really good overtaking opportunity, especially when it is if you don't get it done there, you can get it done on the next chicane. And again, coming down to where Airbeach just came off that slow right-hander, and this chicane, there's so many different overtaking opportunities. It's just being able to set it up, and I'm pretty confident these pro drivers, with their speed and their know-how of these cars and their own abilities to intimidate the next car ahead, like we saw in Suzuka. Even with Suzuka's track not being so stop and starty as Zolder, they were able to even intimidate one another through the S's of the first sector, as we now are watching Christian Hanna in the number 777 car. I was going to say the Honda, but everyone is a Honda. It's a Honda Cup championship. So there is no other cars here. And I do want to point out that, Hanna just goes wide there. Obviously has just done his lap and is going to reset to go back into the pits as we join the car in current 5th place. He goes wide there, coming onto one of the slowest corners on the track as the 2 cars try and get out of his way. The pro drivers, as well as being extremely fast, they are also very respectful of one another. They do like to give each other enough room. They know when to race hard and they know when to race smart. And in qualifying, it's a time to race smart. You want to make sure that no one's angry at you by the time you get to race, because none of these drivers will be, none of them are really stupid enough to give each other a little bit of a hit here and there, show each other their discontent, but it can happen, and I don't think we'll be seeing it in this race at least, as we continue on with King down in 17th place now. He is actually not showing as much pace as he did in the practice. Maybe he was hoping that the rain was going to continue, as he brings himself up to 13th place with a 129.5. He's still 7/10 off the leader, but that means the top 16 positions are within a second, with only 17th being over a second by 0.04 of a second. So the times here are excruciatingly close, and it's going to be one hell of a race, I reckon, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this doesn't surprise me a bit. I mean, we know these guys. We recognize a lot of these guys' names from just previous races with us here, but not to mention just last week at Suzuka, it was incredibly close all day long. Jardier looks like he's hopping over that first curb there. I believe he's on another out lap here, so he's going to try and post one more time. Got about 4.5 minutes left in this qualifying, so enough for these guys to get out and get one more run in. There are a couple cars throughout that have a little time. Actually, if we want to jump over to Darren King again here, Simon, he is currently 0.6 and gaining back in 13th position. We just saw him post that 13th, but this might get him a provisional front row. 0.6 up, as he's going to be coming into the final chicane here very briefly. 0.6 would put him into a 28.9, which would put him in third place, gaining 0.7 now. Actually very, very strong coming into this third sector. And he's going to come across the timing line. And where will this put him? It's going to put him in the pole, taking over Jardier's pole by 0.5 tenths, not even 0.5 tenth. And that pace that we saw in practice there that you alluded to, Thomas, that is coming down strong with King. I'm very happy to see him put down these laps, as he was looking really strong in qualifying. Of course, Jardier is out on a lap now. Vincent not going to make it this particular lap. Car in his way there in the final chicane, unfortunately. So won't be his time to take over pole, but he'll have another chance at it. 3 minutes left here. Jardier up 0.1. He's fighting for 0.1 here as well. Mikowski that we're looking at now up a couple tenths as well. And, you know, as you said, we've got now 16 people in within a second. 0.2, that could be 5 positions at this point, George.
In fact, I think George is gone, so I'll take in replacement of George. Sorry, what was your last question? I just jumped in there.
Yes, I didn't realize George had to step away for a minute. That's my apologies. No, yeah, just like 0.2 that we see Mikowski. Mikowski's coming up out of the final chicane here at 0.2 up, and that could be 5 positions down this grid at this point. You know, we're actually gonna. He's gonna take the pole. Mikowski popping off with a 7.25. And then okay, I'm just gonna quit because Jardier's just posted another lap, and nobody's taking pole. I'm just gonna be quiet for 2 minutes and let these guys go. Apparently.
Yes, Mike, just save your breath whilst they keep putting faster and faster lap times. Being the lap is only a 1:28 for most of the grid, they are going to be able to do another 2 laps at least for the top runners if they have enough fuel to post their fastest lap time. So more and more grip as the session goes on, even though it is 10 minutes with I think it is 28 cars going around on track. It is going to get more and more grippy, as you experience in real life, as we see one of the cars actually go off track in front of Honzik. He's trying to get out of the way. You wouldn't really see that in real life, but it's the most possible way.
Thomas, he's 3/10 up again.
Oh, dearie me. Now we're on board with... I've been on board with Jardier coming up to the slowest corner on the track as he brakes actually really late, turns in using trail braking to make sure he gets to the apex. The car is so stable. He's able to bring the car in without the rear coming out like what normally happens if someone like Caliber, who is not very high, tries to race his car, as he throws it into the last chicane, absolutely nails the apex, hits the exit absolutely perfectly as he strolls to the front as he does a 28.2. That was absolutely fantastic.
I'm going to call it. I'm going to say Jardier gets the pole. I don't think anyone could beat that lap. I mean, that was ridiculous. Like a 28.2 here at Zolder. And you know, he did. I think he got a little bit of slipstream coming down a couple the first straight, the before the first chicane, if I'm not mistaken. That may have brought him up a tenth, but he's now, what is that, 4 tenths or so above everybody. No, about 3 tenths. I'm sorry. So, oh no, yeah, it is 4.5.
Yeah, four
I
tenths,
don't
yeah.
think anybody's gonna beat that. You know, we do have a couple people that are up again. Actually, it looks like Vincent Airbitch just posted a new lap at a 28.8, brought him up a couple more positions, but Jardier's obviously got this one in the bag. You know, as I said earlier, don't take me wrong, Jardier excellent in races as well, but this man in qualifying, like this is his strength here. Not that I don't think that he's going to do just as well in the race, but his strength is hot lapping in my experience, and you know, I'm not surprised to see him 4 tenths up above this alien infested field at this point. I mean, Mikowski, King, Airbitch, all within that 28 mark. Actually, Manu as well within that 28 mark. And there being, you know, what now 11, only 11, because Jardier just posted that blazing time. Only 11 people within a second. But if you go down to a second and a half, you're down in the top 20 realistically here, and that is just ridiculous amounts of time. As we're now watching one of our final qualifiers here, David Mame, I believe it is. He's a 10th up, but he just lost it coming out of that corner. He may post just slightly higher, and he does just an ever so slight faster lap. It was within a tenth or so, but you know, it's still enough for a position or two, because a half a tenth makes up a lot of time. Here comes Airbitch back on to the final straight at the moment, not currently up on his time, but he's going to come across that starting line, and it looks like his final time. Yep, he's just not even going to pass it. He's just like, you know what, it's not worth it. Oh, no, sorry, just a little bit of Discord lag. I apologize. I thought I saw him stop. He's like, no, I don't even want to post the lap. But that's the final qualifier come across there, Lewis Alexander. The session has now ended. So we have two people who haven't qualified. One of those is our race administrator there in 28th place. So Stephen DeBois, just our race administrator, not racing in the race today. But we will see these guys come across the grid here shortly. Here is your leaderboard. Jardier posting an easy pole position at a 28.2 with Mikowski, King, Airbitch, and Manu all within that 28 mark. And then, of course, all the way down to, I believe, 20th position before we get into the 130s. Just an absolute blow. Actually, sorry, the 23rd position before we get down into the 130s. Just absolute blazing laps coming across from everybody here in qualifying today.
With the mandatory pit stop, I wonder if some people down the back are just using this opportunity to give themselves a bit of a better position to get themselves into the pits earlier and get rid of their one pit stop and blaze through the field after everyone else is having to battle with one another and try and get to the head of the field. Although that will be very difficult with this track, as we've mentioned previously. Although there is lots of braking zones that you could possibly overtake, that does come with a lot of contact on Zolder. It is a very difficult track from the country of Belgium, as we see Honzik actually take the lead again with the absolutely blistering track, as Mike was pointing out. And I did think at first that he was having Jardier's praises too soon there. I was expecting a couple of other drivers to post some lap times a bit closer or overtake, as these guys are so close. I didn't want to put anything quite as certain as that at the very beginning. But turns out Mike was absolutely right. Jardier absolutely obliterated the competition, as he did in Suzuka. But in Suzuka, he was taken out on the first lap. Managed to bring it back up to a respectable position, but it was not something that he enjoyed doing too much. Well, of course, he does enjoy racing. He absolutely goes around with a smile on his face the entire time that he's driving, but it was not the absolute best race he can do. With this track, there's a little more easier. Everyone's going to get in a line a bit quicker through the first sector. It does lend itself to not so many first lap crashes. Once you get to the chicane, you want to make sure that everyone is kind of in single file, or if they're in double file, you want to make sure you give each other enough room. You can use the curbs, as I said previously, but you are going to fly about a meter off the ground if you do that, or a couple feet. A meter's a long way, in fact. In fact, we have 3 minutes left to go, so we are going to go now to the track guide.
Welcome to the circuit Zolder, located just 45 miles east of the Belgian capital of Brussels. The 2.49 mile circuit, built in 1963 and last changed in 2007, has 10 corners and a lap record of 128.363 set by Audi in 2018. Overtaking can be difficult around here, but the first chance will come into turn 1 as the fast-paced left-hander is set up nicely by the start-finish straight. If you can't find a way through at turn 1, then turn 2 will give you a good chance at making a block pass through this tricky right-hander. And turn 5, the first of 3 chicanes on this track, which will provide many challenges for the drivers. Mistakes and overtakes are plentiful here.
Alright guys, so that is a track guide from Zolder by Mr. Ryan Gill. Here at Zolder, it is an interesting one. They classify corners. Oddly, me and Ryan were talking about this a couple weeks ago. The debate about how many corners are on this track is up for, well, debate, because some people say like 9, some people say like 18. Ryan could talk about this for hours, but we don't have that time. We are about 90 seconds or so until the grid will start moving off. So I believe Simon here is going to pan through our grid as I call out the names here for everybody. So here in the front row, we have Jardier and Mikowski with Darren King and Vincent Erbich bringing up the second row behind them. Christian Manu and Andrea Rubies coming up in the third row. Sam Levander, Kevin Niles taking out the fourth. David Mame, Kristen Hanna, fifth row. Lloyd Messiah and I might butcher this name a little bit. I apologize. Andrzej Dedek in the sixth row here. Carl Eastwood and Andres Cesarka following them up with Alexandra Weitzel, as well as Daniele Brambilla coming in 15th and 16th. 17th place is Nicola Raccia with Stephen Key coming up in 18th. Martin Lornak, Jose Lamas finishing out the top 20. And then from there on, we have Jose Varga, Stephen and Dustin Woost. Zeman actually coming out in 24th. Not a strong qualifying from him this particular week, but of course, as we saw, the grid was insanely close. Hendrik Zerl, Marcel Richter, Sebastian Lewis Alexander, and Ziziko Madzo finishing out our 28-man grid here at Zolder today. And we are going to be going out on a full formation lap here in about 15 seconds. Jarde will lead them down a lap on this track, let them get their tires and brakes up to temperature before we go green for this 1-hour race here at Zolder. And as mentioned by Thomas earlier, there is a mandatory pit stop. No requirements for that pit stop today. You can take tires, you can take fuel if you would like, but at the very minimum, you have to stop in your pit box and clear that mandatory stop. You'll notice on the leaderboard as they pull off over on the left, that little 1, that means that they have not made their pit stop yet, and you will see that go green later on as they make the pit stop here, George, as they're pulling off on the grid for their formation lap.
Yeah, single file, they'll pull off and begin to get some heat and warmth into their tires and brakes, giving themselves a little bit of breathing room before the chaos begins. And of course, that 1-hour-long battle will commence, and it is a bit of a battle at the same time, a bit of a endurance race, a mini endurance at the same time. You know, they've probably all driven for longer, but an hour for them is going to be really pushing to the limits the entire time. I think that if you do make a mistake here early on, you are going to struggle. So I do believe that, like we saw last week at Suzuka, if something goes wrong at the front early on, you're going to have to struggle to make your way back up the order. Of course, because of the way that the pit stops are strategized here today, the stop and goes, etc., any damage that you pick up will always be detrimental. I mean, you can't even get away with a little bit of damage and hope that someone's mandatory tire change will be, covering for you. So at the end of the day, here at Zolder, with all of these barricades so close to the track, I mean, you can just see how little margin for error there really is. If you run off and you touch the dirt, there are very few places that you aren't going to run into something and make contact. So these drivers all will bear that in mind, and making their way through the second chicane the leaders will eventually begin to double themselves up.
Yeah, and quickly here as we get farther down the track, towards the very short track, I'm going to put you guys on the spot here for a second. So, Thomas, who do we got for the race today? What you thinking? I think you, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you take Darren King last week?
I think it was Airbreach. But I was thinking of this, I couldn't remember. I was going to try and go with the same driver to back up who I really believe in, but I forgot, so I can't even back up my own memory. But out of the performance of practice and just my personal interest of how they're going to go up the field, I want to back King for this race.
Gotcha. And George quickly has become here in the last chicane. Who do we got today?
Finally on the mark, I think that it's Jardier's race to lose, so I'll put my money on Jardier.
Gotcha. All right. Well, my pick, I think, again, will go with Vincent Airbeach this week. I saw him be very strong in the past couple sessions here. He struggled a little bit in the rain, but a very fast time, very consistent times for him coming out of qualifying and in practice earlier in the week from what I'm seeing. But right now, we are going green here at Zolder. Jardier taking the start-finish line. They're going to go off towards turn one here, stay in double file all the way down in grid order. Mikowski peeking into Jardier there. He's going to be on the outside of turn one, but that's going to leave him down for the inside of turn two. He is holding that position hard on the brakes, but Jardier a little bit harder as he's able to get past him just slightly, and they're going to file down into single file here, at least at the top 5 or 6. As they're coming down into turn, I'm going to call it turn 3 because I don't know what turn numbers are here. Nobody really does. But it's like single file all the way down, double file, maybe a little bit in the back, but very clean start here.
I'm just going to take over for you there, Mike. Your microphone just had a little death there, so I will take over as we are now watching 10th place, David Mame, as I think you said before. I keep wanting to pretend it as Mame, and he's defending from the 11th. Hannah in the number 777, as the entire field now is pretty much in a single file as you watch them snake in and out of the second chicane of the circuit, and they come up to what I think is the most exhilarating corner. In fact, we actually watched it again as we are on board with Marshall Richter on the Jensen Team Rocket RGN as they come to the most exciting corner, that uphill straight back down again as they start coming to the slowest part of the circuit. And they've had a little tap. Butlerek has hit Rochia. Rochia is now off the circuit. Rochia has quickly stopped the car. He's now back on circuit, but he has rejoined in 23rd. The live stewards will take a look at that. We here at RLM have no less than 7 live stewards that will take care of every single little piece of incident that happens on track and give a proper and unbiased adjudication to the incident, and hopefully everyone will be happy with that. It's better than letting the game do it and the people that are in fault just getting away with it. We want to make sure that the drivers behave themselves, and if that means giving them a harsh penalty like a drive-through, then that is what we will be doing. But these pro drivers will be making their way up their field quickly again as we ride on board with the number 8 Mame, sorry, I keep saying it wrong, as we watch one of the cars in the background fly over the first chicane, and the line going into the second chicane as no one else can get past. As we watch the third car in that line getting a little bit closer, I think that is Whitesell, getting a little bit closer to Messiah in the red number 1 car. He is pointed out as a pro driver on the list there, but everyone is driving in the same class.
Jardier is under attack here from Mikowski. Mikowski is trying to get himself in front of Jardier here, and it's not easy to do so. If you're placing that car on the inside apex, it makes it very difficult to do. And of course, Mikowski is going to come under fire from King if Jardier plays his cards right. So maybe just backing the pack up a little bit, trying to get some of the cars in the pack to start to fight with Mikowski, keep him busy for his position. But it does look like Jardier does have a good run down through the start of the initial section, and Mikowski is going to have to try and get back on board to the back end where he was earlier on. I do believe there was a little bit of backing up going on there as King and Manu are going to enter into the arena, Mike.
Yeah, these guys are racing incredibly close here, as we would expect, especially here at Zolder. It's such a short lap, and we saw these guys running 128s in qualifying. That's probably about a 130, 131 in race pace. It's a very short track to have 28 drivers on. As we're on board with Mads out here, looking back at Zerl and Richter and various other cars besides, and it looks like Zerl's going to try for the outside here, coming in to the first chicane. We're going to see how this one ends up. Little bounce over the chicane, a little bit of a knock there. It's very difficult to go side by side in that corner, but they are 3 wide now coming down this hill into the second chicane, and this is just an awesome job by these guys. No contact this time as they're coming down through the second chicane side by side, and Madzau is gonna gain that position, I believe, over Zerl, if I'm not mistaken, and at least move up one more down the marker. It's very difficult to pass through here, these chicanes. So we see a little bit of a dive. I believe that's Zarif coming down there, shooting that car down the chicane very hard on the brakes, and he's going to make up a couple positions there. Awesome job by him. Very clean dive there, George.
Yeah, he just seemed to see a gap and he went for it, but that's not clean at all. Madzo just hanging on a little bit too late into that final corner. He kind of just misses his braking point. He's got 2 cars behind him that he was possibly worried about, and he's just made a big mistake, run into the back. Stewards will be kept busy having a look at that. Madzo going back into the pits there, obviously picking up some damage as we look at Sam Lavender running down, being chased down by Witzel. As we saw a move being done on the outside here, Lavender going to make sure that the outside covered in before coming in for a sweeping approach to the chicane, launching himself up, taking a little bit of a bad exit, which means that the opportunity is going to be there into the second chicane. They're going to give each other room, and the move going to be done through the second chicane. Nice and clean move getting done there as well. Lavender now going to be, Lavender going to be chasing down onto the back of Witzel then to try and make up for lost positions.
Yeah, I mean, he's working for it. Sam, you can see him braking really hard into these corners as well. Of course, here at Zolder, that's what you got to do. You got to brake hard into these corners. Otherwise, you're going to see that dive like we just saw last lap coming in to that hairpin there, I believe it was. And Hana right behind Lavender as well. So if he makes just the slightest mistake, he's going to be able to capitalize on that. Hana will, and be able to move up in the 9th position. Sam looking like he lost a little bit of time there coming out of that of that final chicane, and he's going to drop back just slightly. And just a quick update, it looks like we are having some pit stops happen already. I saw Vincent Erbich actually hit the pits, guys. Of course, we were looking at him as a strong contender, but I'm wondering if he got caught up somewhere. Of course, we'll get some stewards announcements about that in a bit if he did. But it could be an unfortunate situation for him, or he could have just wanted to get out of that pack there at the beginning, because it's rough. As we now switch over to Darren King fighting with Manu. Manu broke. He was like, nah, you know what? I'm not going to try for that one in that chicane. A little bit of bump over there. He lost a little time for it, but, you know, it keeps it safe. It keeps it clean, and he can fight for this 3rd position here briefly.
I must just say, it really looks like these guys can throw the Hondas through these chicanes, especially here in the dry. I wonder if there is going to be any spots of rain. I think that the weathermen in the booth would be able to let me know if there is any possibility of that coming along. Kevin Niles, he's got Messiah chasing down as they make their way down to the final corner. Once again, we do mention just how short these lap times are. It's a short dash, but of course they're going to be doing that for the next 52 minutes. So everything has to be precise. If it's not precise, you're going to be sent off. And once you do that, we saw earlier on, one tiny mistake, if someone comes to fight with you and you give them that position of getting alongside through a corner, you can lose 2 or 3 positions at that. And Sam Lavender here is maybe going to lose one on the outside. It's a 3-way wide, and Sam Lavender has been sent off in that, gets thrown out, and on the outside here does just kind of not give enough room to the 3-way situation. And
yeah, I believe Hana bounced off the curb there a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You saw him just kind of got shot into him. Nothing, he was just kind of a on for the ride for that. Unfortunate for Lavender, dropping back a few positions on that.
No, for sure. I mean, a passenger, but at the same time, a move that you are going into there, you have to be aware that you are going to, you know, next to 2 other cars as well. And yeah, potentially not always going to end well in there. Unfortunately, the physics and things are not going to play fair in the Hondas, and we see that oversteer come out, and we're seeing it again here as Nicola Rocchia in the number 85 holds down 11th, just a bit in front of Suzuka at number 818. And he's going to try and hold off for position, but it does look like he's struggling. And if he is struggling at this stage of the race with the tires, it's not going to be fun later on, Thomas.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it does look like they are really struggling, some of these drivers, with their tyres. One thing I wanted to point out as well is that Suzuka, there's less of a chance of your driving line being different to another guy's ahead of you, as we are now watching Marcel Richter for 15th position as he has Lorenk up behind him. I believe we corrected this before and it was Lawrence.
Yes,
we kept on calling him Lorenk, but it's Lawrence. So I'm going to make sure I get it right this time. Lawrence in the 171, trying to go up on the inside in the first corner. And he brakes a little bit early. He must have seen a bit of that incident that happened before, and he decided to back out of it. One thing I wanted to quickly mention was that Suzuka, not much change of the driving line between each driver, but this track, the amount of braking zones and the way you can enter to hit the apex is very different from drive to driver, and I think we were seeing that with the incidents towards the front of the grid, as we actually watched Richter get it wrong on the apex of the third corner, I believe, and goes out the gravel, but he managed to stop the car fast enough to continue with his race, only losing 2 positions there, so only down to 17th, now behind the car that he was chasing, as we now are looking at Kevin Niles. I believe that is being under attack by the 7th place Messiah with the number 1 next to his name. No, he's not the championship winner of the previous season. We haven't done this before, so he's lucky to get the number 1, as they are quite steadily going to the last chicane, not attacking it as much as they were doing previously. I think they are really actually struggling with the tyres, as George was mentioning before, and they have to, if they want to be competitive, make them last the entire 1 hour. I think after practicing in the rain, and I think the qualifying being a little cooler and the race being a little hotter, it's not something they will be completely used to, but something they will have to get used to very quickly if they are to bring it up to the leader of Honzik, who is still miraculously and quite righteously in first, as we watch the Messiah number 1 go up on the outside of the chicane, and he managed to get it before Niles has any chance of defense. Niles giving him the space that is needed, and Messiah, is it Messiah or Messiah? I'm just going to keep saying Messiah. Actually gets quite a sizable gap now as he goes into the chicane, as you actually watch him, as I was saying before, take a wider entry to the chicane that gives him a really good exit. And again, Niles turning in a bit sooner than Messiah, who is hopefully going to brake, and he brakes a lot later than the guy in 6th place, as we continue to ride on with these fantastic onboard shots. You can see the rev limiter climb quickly as he starts shifting through the gears. The gears in these cars are quite low geared, luckily for the drivers. They're changing and accelerating quickly before they have to quickly change back down. I don't know if they do hit 6th gear on this circuit. It is a quick and short-styled circuit, as we are now watching Jardier, or Jaroslav Honzik, of the Jardier community team, the number 3 car, as he's actually catching some back markers, possibly people that have had incidents or people that have taken their pit stops already. So we're looking at the back of the number 21. That's not on my list on Discord, but I'll quickly check it out on my personal game. So back at 21, so yeah, that is the 25th positioned Zeman, and he actually put in a pretty respectable qualifying time, somewhere in the mid-pack. And so being at the back, it's not somewhere where he wants to be, but he's already completed his pit stop. He's able to bring it up back through the field as quickly as possible, as we ride on board with Darren King in the Ford Zilla team car, which is kind of ironic being in a Honda car. So obviously a team name that he always races, but it's not something that works well for Cup, as he actually overtakes one of the another NSX. I'm not sure if that is for position or a back marker, as we had seen previously. I think that was the number 21. Yeah, that was indeed the car number 21 they overtook. So the guy in last place kindly getting out of the way. As I said before, the pro drivers being very, very respectful, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely, Thomas. And just to make a little bit of a correction, Zeman did actually qualify towards the back today, so he's holding around the position that he was in. He's had a bit of a rough go here at Zolder today. Of course, like you mentioned, he did take his pit stop already. So, assuming that he can kind of make up a little bit of pace, he is, posting reasonably respectable times in comparison to the rest of the field. So it is possible for him to at least make up some positions. We're seeing the back half of the field. A few people have already made a pit stop. Of course, a couple of people have had contact, and there are just a couple of people who have maybe made an early pit stop. But just a quick update on our stewarding situation here. I've been keeping an eye on the stewards. There was a drive-through that got served by car 26 for a collision with car 171 a little bit earlier in the race. That was Martin Lawrence getting shot off the track in the 171. 26 car of Stephen Key taking that drive-through penalty. Stephen currently back in 24th position. So stewards keep it on top of it. I've been keeping an eye on the stewarding sheets. They are nice and busy. Of course, keeping an eye and making sure everybody is getting all of these penalties. Actually, there's looks like another penalty they're going to be coming announced here shortly. The incident we saw in the first corner, the 777 car that got bounced off that curb is going to receive a warning for a bad re-entry, possibly. Stewards will make that official here in a moment, but that is so far what we're looking at for that particular issue here, George.
Yeah, we're still looking at Darren King, who's doing a good job at holding down that third podium position. But Manu also equally doing the right thing here, just trying to put a little bit of pressure onto the back of King and try and force that blue number 38 to make the mistake and allow him to slot himself up onto that championship third place. But, at the end of the day, it will come down to who holds their nerve the best, who manages to endure the rest of the race, and who manages to cope with the pit strategies as well. So, people might be doing a splash and dash, people might be grabbing tires. At the States, it's at the way that some of these guys are handling in their cars. It might look like grabbing an extra set of rubbers for those rims might not be the worst cause, but at the end, it doesn't really matter right now because the positions could really change. So everybody's sort of settling in. We've got 43 minutes left of racing. Looking at Nicola Rakia in 10th place. So he holds up that 10th gatekeeper position. He's got Suzuka right behind him still. So again, Suzuka's doing what he needs to do. We see a lot of these drivers are settling into that train position, and it's GT3 racing. It's not something that you can just get done straight away unless someone makes a big mistake, and we're trying to use as much of the slipstream as possible, Thomas.
Yeah, as we watch the two cars behind Richia, I'm going to say that is. I'm sorry, absolutely butchered your name again. I didn't contact you last time as I said I would, and I will make sure I do that after the race to make sure I get it right. As we actually watch the two cars. Oh, in fact, we actually moved to Darren King with fourth place Manu close up behind, trying to get in position for the first chicane, one of many chicanes on the circuit, as we keep suggesting, but it's just so many places that you can overtake. But if Darren King managed to stay on his driving line, then there's not much the number 7 car is going to be able to do, as Manu has actually dropped back a little bit, as King managed to get such a launch off of the first chicane as he does on the second chicane. Manu is really struggling to bring the nose of the car in to hit the apex correctly. He seems to be understeering as we watch the car wiggle out to the end of that one as he gives him a flash. He's not too happy about that. Oh no, in fact, he's flashing one of the back markers out of the way. Or maybe it was a bit of both. Flashing the third place of King and flashing the guy that he wants to get past quickly. None of the guys at the front will want to give any time away, although it is an hour race in all GT respects. It is a sprint race as we watch Darren King go wide, and we almost watch the fourth place of Manu crash into the back to him as the back marker is just spectating the whole battle unfolding in front of him as the Fordzilla car manages to break away again and go into the first corner, goes down a couple gears. as as he gets a little bit of a gap, that the car behind of Manu is actually set up a little better for the mid-corner twisty turns of the first sector, not the middle, not the slower chicanes and the slowest corner at the end. And it is really seeing it's probably see some really good action once he managed to get out into the open air after the pit stops have happened. I wonder if someone like Manu would come into the pit early to stop being behind someone like Darren King, Mike.
You know, it's possible, Thomas, but, you know, I think that so far Manu, while he's able to keep pace with Darren King here, he's having a little bit of an issue making that overtake maneuver. Of course, that what we didn't see from the camera angle we were watching in that final chicane last lap was there was a back marker who was trying to slow down for the cars ahead of King, and unfortunately, kind of, it just timed just so slightly that King had to kind of correct himself to not hit the back marker. So we should still see that consistency come out of King still, as we've been seeing for the past, 20 minutes even. Now looking at Christian Hanna with Cesarca behind him and Rakia ahead. These guys still in this battle, all within, give or take about a second of each other. They're a little bit split back from the main pack ahead of them. But this, actually, I believe that's a back marker ahead of Hana. I apologize. So it's just Hana and Cesarca here within a second of each other. They're a little bit farther back from the main pack. A little bit of a spread out here, especially within the top 15 or so. We are seeing a few battles go on like this one, but they're finally starting to spread out here a little bit, as you alluded to, George.
Yeah, it's going to do that. It's not everybody is going to be able to hold that same pace, and not everybody's going to be able to hold the same focus here. And at the same time, you've got so many on-track battles happening that you have to just adapt yourself and, just accept them as they come. So if you were just expecting to, run away and not have another pro driver giving you a run for your money, that wasn't going to happen here, as we see the battle between Alexander Bitzel and Diederik. Diederik? Mike?
Diederik, I believe it is.
Diederik, okay. So
that's what I'm going to go with.
48. Yeah, we'll go with that and jump over so that I don't have to say the name anymore. It's Steven Wust in the number 99. And Lavender in 14th place is looking to take 13th off of Steven's hands. The number 99 NSX going to get the run and make a bit of a mistake. Round the outside goes Lavender. Round the outside goes Lavender. On the dirt, side by side, they go into the hairpin. The space can be given, and both drivers giving each other room, and they will continue this down a little dash to the final chicane. But it does look like Steven Wust in the number 99 going to get the run here. On the inside, will Lavender go? Nope, he won't. Very good driving, but a lot of curb being picked up as well, and that's going to allow Lawrence to get in on this action, and it's going to be a almost 3-car battle. Let's call it a 3-car battle coming into T1, and this could be interesting. Who's going to yield first? Neither is going to. They're going to give each other room, equal room, side by side. They will go once again. Nobody wants to yield off here, but Wust going to lift off the accelerator. That might have let Lawrence through, because Wust is going to be squeezed onto the outside, and now Lawrence on the inside of Wust. Wust losing out 2 positions there.
Oh man, that was awesome racing by these guys. That is not an easy place for Steven to have to let off the throttle there. Turn 3, I'm gonna call it, is like one of the most awkward spots to have to make a pass at. But Lawrence, he was waiting, he was patient that whole time. He didn't poke his nose in too much. He wanted to let the guys know he was there, but he didn't poke his nose in, and he wanted to make sure that somebody made that mistake, and he was able to capitalize on it. And Wust now falling back to 15th position after losing those 2 spots, and Lawrence now gonna hunt after Lavender. He's been very quick, Lawrence has, this entire race. Every time we see him, he's up somebody's backside, and I would not be surprised to see it.
Yeah, Mike, I was just going to say, it's just because he's out of position. Remember, he got knocked out at the hairpin, was running a lot higher up in the pack, so you would expect him to catch up to a lot of these drivers that he possibly qualified in front of. So, possibly just trying to make his way through the order. I'm going to love little battles like that with Lavender clearing the way and being able to capitalize from the back. That's one of Simon's favorite moves, when the driver from the back comes in and just joins into the action here and manages to take a place overall. But Lavender still going into drift city in that Honda. That's going to cost him time though, as Lawrence now going to have a little peek around the outside, but not. He's going to try and cut back in, and he does have a good run here. He's going to go onto the back fender of Lavender here again. They're going to go into the fast right-hander. Who's going to yield first? Lawrence going to get a sweeping move done. Both of them going to run wide, but it's going to leave Lavender in the slip, Thomas.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic racing as Lawrence has managed to defend the position from Lavender. Lavender got really unlucky with a little bit of a twitch there from the rear end, and that gave Lawrence the absolute opportunity to bring it up, as I think who's that? Lavender is actually now being under attack from Verst. And Verst has been quite racy this, well, I was going to say this race. I don't really want to say that. That was really bad English from myself. But Worst actually didn't qualify so good. It was like 17th or 18th position with his brother, I believe it is, where he is down in 17th. Worst has managed to bring it up to 14th place, so a terrific race that he has had so far, as we are only 5 minutes to the halfway point. 25 minutes of absolutely fly by as we watch the three cars give each other a little bit more space now. But as you were pointing out with Lawrence before, he's kind of had a bit of a hit and he's coming back. Airbridge in 16th place with his mandatory pit stop done is the first place position out of those who have completed their mandatory pit stop, and I have been watching him slowly climb the field of the people around him, not being quite as fast, which is absolutely okay. Some people, of course, we're all here to have fun in these 10 racing cars. We like to think of it as a real passion of us all. But at the end of the day, it is something that we all must enjoy. If you take it too seriously, then you're not going to get your enjoyment out of it anymore. As Airbreak is now in 15th place, actually close up behind these two battling cars. And I can't wait to see what he does closer to the end of the race, as we are now on board with Rochia under attack from Hannah in the 777 car. Hannah bringing it up on the outside and then has a look on the inside as we come up to one of the fastest corners on the circuit. As I said before, I love this part of the circuit. When you come over the hill, you lose a bit of traction from all the wheels as they spin a little bit over the top. You leave a bit of rubber behind, and then you have to quickly brake. Then quickly accelerate out again up to the last chicane of the circuit, as we are now jumping back on board with Darren King, looking at that Fanatic sponsored rear spoiler, as he is again looking at Manu. These guys are not going to leave each other for the whole hour, I don't think, George.
No, and if you've gotten to this stage of the race, you've started to learn what the driver in front of you is doing, and you know what the driver behind you is doing. So you're kind of in that sort of waiting for somebody to make a mistake, or even potentially just lift a little bit in the wrong place or not get on as quickly. And that's kind of what Darren King's done there. He looks a little bit oversteery coming out as well. So Manu's closed down that gap just a little bit as we come down to Thomas's favorite sector. My favorite sector is definitely not this one. I hate this happen, as Darren King there proves why. It's just so uncomfortable. It feels like a break in pace, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, we all have our favorite parts. I quite like the parts where you can get a little bit drifty. And, this is very close racing coming in from King and Manu. Manu almost getting that spoiler tucked right up to the back. We see a little bit of flashing lights, letting King know that Manu's wanting to get the move done if he leaves the room there. Don't leave room. I will take the room. If you give me an opportunity, I will seize the day. But Manu not going to be able to, as King really just getting into that rhythm and flow. Thomas, you talked about it earlier. There's really one sort of main line here, but you can enter the corners differently.
Yeah, indeed. And as we continue to watch this battle, I really want for Manu to enter the pits and get his pit stop out of the way. A bit of clear air is going to do him a bit of good. With him flashing the lights and getting a bit squiggly in Sector 1, you can tell he's really starting to lose his patience, and he'll probably start making more mistakes soon. The more mistakes you make, the less time that you... the more time that you're spending on track, so the laps are slower. As we now are on board with Hannah on the rear cam, nice to see the tarmac in all its glory with all the rubber laid down. As we look back at Lawrence, who has actually been making, I don't think he's made any more positions, I don't think, but he is racy as ever, and they've caught up quickly to Hannah as they
Can't touch that
absolutely go
curb.
mad. And I did point that out in the practice and qualifying, but that is something you really don't want to be doing when you're pushing hard and you have the car in front of you. You can't really see the apex of those corners so much. The curbs that you can hit are quite narrow, and he just misjudged it. Luckily enough for him, I don't think that would be any damage, and he's only lost one position, so he's still in the fight for those points. As we are now on board with Dednek. Oh god, we were saying this before, weren't we?
Dedek.
Dedek.
Dedek is what we're calling it.
Dedek, the number 48 car, as we look behind at Saka in the number 818, and he takes it very, very wide. It must be a bit of dirty air or missing of braking points. One thing about the first corner of this track, there's not too much of a visual cue of your braking points. Sometimes it can be down to feeling on this older style track, not so much help as you get on the modern tracks, say like Paul Ricard. As we now are back with Lawrence in the 171 car, still trying to attack Lavender ahead, as this train has caught up with Hannah. I think, in fact, I don't think they've caught up. I think Hannah was attacking Rogia previously, and they are a little bit further behind. So Roger is picking up the speed. Roger is still 3 seconds behind Saka in 9th position, as we now are on. We are now watching Jardier. As someone pointed out to me in the Twitch comments, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, so I'm just going to call him Jardier from now on. As he is actually having a very, very comfortable lead of 3.3 seconds. He can pit whenever he wants. I assume that he is going to want to do it as late as possible, so he doesn't get into the dirty air of the cars behind. Although we did see in the 3 races, the Pro, Pro-Am and Am races, that pitting the latest is not necessarily the best plan, as the people that have pitted ahead of you will leapfrog you. Although, as I said previously, and Mike said, I almost called you Jesse there, sorry Mike, although you don't have to take any fuel or tyres, the undercut can work, and I think it just gives the drivers who have pit earlier a bit of a morale boost, as we watch Hannah actually get a 5-second penalty. Do we know that's what that's for, Mike?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say that, like, are just all Americans the same to you, Thomas? Because like, me and Jesse sound nothing alike. Jeez.
Indeed they are not, but I've been struggling with the English language today, so I hope to all the Twitch listeners and watchers, I hope you're enjoying it, and I'm very sorry for butchering everyone's name, including my co-commentators, so apologies.
Well, as George just pointed out in our comms chat here, hashtag Murica, so we'll take it, as we're watching King and Manu here still fighting this fight. Manu not giving up, not made up any ground. But yes, so back to the penalty on Hana here. Actually, there was a potential warning that came across for him that got announced earlier from the stewards, and they have actually made a decision. This doesn't happen often, but they did make a different decision there. They decided to apply a time penalty to Hana here instead for that bouncing off the first corner little apron there and into other cars, causing a collision. They decided it wasn't really worth a drive-through penalty, as he was kind of it was kind of half his fault, half not his fault. So a little bit of a decision on the stewards there to just apply a short time penalty. But we are seeing a penalty come out that I'm a little unfortunate about, as it comes across my pick for the win today, which is from Vincent Erbich. He apparently took out car 221 a little bit earlier when making up some positions, and he's going to have to serve a drive-through. It looks like he is serving right now, as you see that little P next to his icon down in current 15th position. So unfortunate for him, that is likely going to cost him the race. I would imagine him being well out of the top 5 unless something else happens, as he's going to lose quite a bit of time, as this is a very, very long pit lane here at Zolder. And unfortunate for him, but hey, that's how it is, and that's what the live stewarding is here for, is to keep the races clean. So we're now going to switch back over to Lawrence here, who, George, he is still fighting the good fight here with Lavender and Hana.
he has managed to get the move done onto Lavender before, right? So, you know, he can get it done again. He just then mustn't send the car flying over the first chicane to then retain the position. So Lavender, there was definitely a benefit of a driver pushing too hard after getting past, which meant that got a free position back. But Lawrence not giving up a good fight, wants to make his way back within the top 10. Of course, fighting back from an earlier incident. So Lavender going to go into the pit stops there. That's going to throw Lawrence off. Lawrence did not know that Lavender was going into the pits. So the speed that Lavender carried going forward completely threw Lawrence off
This
there.
pit lane, I love this pit lane at Zolder because you can do that to people.
You're so right. I love the fact that Zolder loves their chicane so much. They were like, let's do 1 chicane, 2 chicanes, and let's just put a chicane as well for the pit straight, and let's do one right on the last corner as well. Chicanes for days here at Zolder, even into the pit box.
Yeah, luckily Lawrence, I mean, he's been very quick. So, while he did lose, I'm going to say probably about 3/4 of a second or so on the guy ahead, that he should still be able to make up that time and get back up onto the back of Hana here. Of course, Hana is going to serve that time penalty at the end of the race, so that will, lose him a few seconds. He's going to need to start pushing if he can stay ahead, because currently he'd be losing 2 positions if the race ended right now. Of course, there's still 25 minutes left, so we watch Niles with Dustin Woost here. We've been talking about Steven Woost earlier. Dustin has actually made up a few positions, trying to catch up to I believe it's his brother here. Niles, though, has already made his pit stop. He is currently in the first position of cars who have made their pit stop. Of course, I still think he's without, or not quite in that even top 5 mark, as there is quite a bit of time at this point between, first and 10th even. Niles, though, needs to defend against Dustin here, as there's only 25 minutes left in this race, and there is a couple cars coming behind us. We're seeing Dustin actually get pushed wide. Varga went for the dive there, and Dustin was like, nope, I'm not having any of it. He was worried that he was going to come into the back of him. Dustin making the decision to just go a little bit farther out to the left to make sure he doesn't get knocked off the track. And Varga going to make up a position. A little bit of a sketchy move by him, but he got it done. As we're now seeing some of the pit stops come through, there is Dustin. He's actually going to dive into the pit lane and just get himself out of that situation. As we're switching back now to Rakia, who is being followed by Hana still. Lawrence drawing up the back there. Of course, Rakia has made up quite a bit of time. He's actually 4.5 seconds ahead now of these guys, as we're actually going to look at a couple cars we haven't seen today, I don't believe, besides for a little bit in qualifying. We have Zerl and Richter back in 22-23. There's even battles going through all the way down the order here, as I've just noticed Lavender got himself a speeding penalty in pit lane, George. That's going to be a stop and go 30. That's probably going to take him more or less out of this fight.
Oh, that's definitely not what you want to add onto your pit stop here at all, especially if you are going for the splash and dash as well. That's just insult to injury, because you are pushing for the time. Stop and go 30, that's just as bad as it gets. You get costed the time of driving in, coming to a complete stop, nobody working on the car, and then having to drive out all under the pit limiter. So that really is going to drop Lavender down the order. And that's going to allow people like this, battling for 22nd and 23rd to even get up into another position. And the two of them battling here might find a free one along the way. But, the number 39 and the number 912, Hendrik Ziel, will right on board as we look back at Richter come down into the fast right-hander. Good to see the wind farms in the background of the splitter shots, as well as the asphalt on the ground. Like Thomas talked about earlier, it's getting well rubbered in. You see that from the heli cam, you see it from this cam, coming into the chicane, late on the brakes from Richter, closes down the gap, but doesn't manage to have a clean exit. And it just shows you can have a good break in, but if you do compromise your exit out, you will lose some time, Thomas.
Yes, absolutely fantastic to watch the guys at the back battling just as hard as the guys at the front. As I said previously, everyone here is here to have a good time. We actively encourage that here at RLM. We want everyone to be taking part. That's why we have the different tiers, so you can battle with the people of your ability, and if you're better than them, then of course you'll go higher and higher and higher until you reach the pro guys like these, and hopefully we'll be seeing you on the streams, and we'll be commentating and butchering your name as well. So if you want to join us, it's redlinemotorsports.com, and join our Discord. We would love to have you here as we actually watch the Lawrence go up on the inside of Rocha, and they hit each other. Rocha does go up on the inside, taking the gravel. As we watch a replay now, he absolutely got that braking point horrendously wrong. We've seen a couple people brake so much later than trains of cars, and it's worked out, but sadly that did not work out that time. Lucky enough for Lawrence, he was wise enough to give that position back, and they're going to battle for it again. Luckily, these two cars don't have too much damage, but it has pushed them back into the 11th place of Verst in the number 99 car, I believe that is. As we now, as Lawrence is actually closer again than he's been since that incident. And he's had a look a bit on, looking up on the inside of the first chicane, backs out of it, and he makes sure he doesn't hit the chicane as hard as he did the previous lap. And he has a really good run now as he has a look up on the outside, which of course will be the inside of the next corner, but he backs out of it as Rocha goes on the defense. Rocha goes in a little deep as Lawrence managed to hit the apex perfectly, but there's nowhere else to pass. Lawrence brings his nose a little bit earlier into the next few corners. He's actually getting such a speed in the car ahead. I maybe wonder if he flashed his lights, it might distract him a little bit more. He's so close. I don't even think Rocha will be able to see his lights in the wing mirror. They are so close. Hopefully now they're coming back up to the last chicane. Let's hope he doesn't outbrake himself and lose it again, but I don't think that's going to phase him too much as a pro driver. He's going to try and make the move again, and he actually goes to the pit as well as the 11th place of worst. Mike.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see that. Lawrence has been being held up quite a bit here. Obviously, he has the pace to be up in the top even 5 possibly. So he kind of made the decision. 20 minutes left on the race. He was tired of being stuck up behind him and just decided to dive into the pit lane rather than cause an incident like happened potentially the corner before, the lap before rather. Apologies. But just go straight off to the pits, make that pit stop. You've got to make one anyway. It's a good time for it. Like I said, 20 minutes left in this race. We're now looking at Manu and King, who, again, we've been watching these guys for 40 minutes now. They have been fighting and fighting and fighting. Manu's been very patient, waiting for King to make a mistake. King has just not made that mistake yet. But of course, like I just said, 20 minutes left to go. We have pit stops still remaining. Both of these guys have not pit yet. So I think that a lot of this, with this fight in particular, is going to come down to what happens in the pit stops, as we're going to see these guys have to come in a pit here reasonably soon to make up that stop for the race. And it's going to be interesting to see how they come out of the pit. If Manu can potentially make up that time there. He's been within about a second of King the entire race, more or less. And of course, these guys at Suzuka last week as well. Manu, I don't think had that good of a race last week, if I'm not or 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, Manu finished in the podium position. He was second. It was King that actually suffered a little bit more than I would expect him to. He was back in 32nd position. He may not have even had a chance to race last week, if that's the case, but I know he finished in 32nd. Rough race from him, or potentially he just had to miss the first race of the season. But he wants to fight for this points and make sure that he can get up in the order for the remaining 2 races. And of course, Zolder here, this being a 4-race championship, just a quick hitter for this Honda NSX Cup. But just while we have a little bit of a break in the action here, guys, I've noticed a lot of people following and everything here in Twitch. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out. Feel free to, as Simon mentioned in the chat there, if you're an Amazon Prime customer, you can, of course, subscribe to us for free. Helps us pay for our server costs. Servers aren't cheap. Website isn't cheap. And, every little bit helps and helps bring us these races to you guys. We actually had 5 consecutive days of racing. This is day 4 this weekend. We'll have the Honda NSX Pro-Am Cup tomorrow come to you as well. And of course, there is our anniversary event happening this Friday at Brands Hatch. ACC's 1-year anniversary will be May 29th. And we are hosting a sprint race weekend, a team event in traditional GT World Europe or World Challenge Europe style. where you run 2 one-hour races with the driver swap. That will come at you Friday evening. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to start, the actual race starts at 8 p.m. British summertime. Of course, qualifying and practice before then will be live. And Nick, it'll be Ryan, George, and Jesse, the dream team of commentators, actually going to be bringing you that race. You'll see Jesse there in the chat. And of course, Ryan there as well, and George joining us here in the box today for the NSX Cup, so you can look forward to that on Friday. And just a little bit of a break in the action here. Of course, King and Manu still fighting the good fight there for what is currently third position. Jardier and Mikowski still holding down first and second. Mikowski is actually not too far off Jardier at the moment, I don't believe. He's losing a little bit of time here and there, but he's still about 3.5 seconds back. Jardier doing a really good job being consistent here, George.
Yeah, Jardier doing exactly what he needed to do. He got that clean start, which he did not get at Suzuka. So last week had to fight his way back through the field, had a couple of incidents that he needed to deal with there as well. So this time around, a clean drive coming out for this part of the race. Obviously don't want to count the chickens before they hatch. Did pick Jardier as my potential race winner, so do not want to send any of the bad juju over to the man in the number 3 car at this point in the race. Of course, still does have to go in for his pit stop, and anything can happen in the pits. We're going to look back at Niles, as it looks like a little move on the inside coming there from Air Beach. A little bit cheeky coming in, a little bit of contact coming down. Was that Air Beach that came in there? I'm not 100%.
It is, yeah. That green car is definitely Air Beach. Yeah, he likes that bright green livery.
Yeah, so a bit of a camo style going down there gives me that sort of vibe as I look down the start-finish straight, but a cheeky little move on the inside, similar to what Varga did as well earlier on, which was something that I didn't get to touch on with you, Mike. Racing is racing, but at the end of the day, the move that was made there was only made possible by the fact that Vust backed out of it, right? He pulled out of that move. You would have thought that if you were late on the break-in and made a mistake like that, perhaps give the position back. In my opinion, that's something that I want to ask of someone like Thomas and yourself, Mike. So let's start with Thomas. How do you feel about racing like that?
I think it depends on the situation, but I think I'm all for it. As long as you are merciful at certain stages of it, I think you are more than entitled to make your aggressive moves. What do you think, Mike?
I concur. I like to see the aggressive moves happen because that's what really makes the races exciting. But at the same time, I'm the type of driver who, if I make, if I make a bad move and I make some contact with you and kind of knock you out of the way, I'm the type of driver who's going to give the position back, unless we're in a crowd of cars, right? I mean, if you're in a 5-6 car pack, it's just not realistic for that to happen. If you kind of get bumped out of the way a little bit, well, that's just hard racing. I do really like to see these guys, kind of knock doors and leave some tire marks on the side panels and stuff. It makes for really exciting racing from the comms box, George.
Yeah, I think there has to be an element of it there as well, and I think that rubbing is racing and definitely part of it. I think I definitely fall onto the side where if I do something, I'm a little bit too courteous and just want to give positions back, or where I feel like, oh, that was a bit of a bomb from me. I tend to just give it back, but I race at the back of the pack anyway. These guys are far more professional and far more capable, so the racing that we get to see here at RLM is always interesting and always at the peak of the esports side of things.
Yeah, if I was in this race, I'd be about 8 laps down by now, as Jardier had come past me about that many times.
Is 8 laps down the way to Spo retired? Because I would be 8 laps down too.
I'd hope that I at least could make it through the race. But I mean, here at Zolder, it's so difficult because Jardier has done 31 laps here, right? Where he's on his 32nd lap. We're now 13 minutes remaining. And he's running times in the low 30s as well. Like, his last lap was a 30.0. His best lap is a 29.6. That shows how consistent he's been, right? Me, practicing a little bit of times here, I've been running in like maybe the low 33s, high 32s. 3 seconds a lap over an hour. That's a lot of time lost. So, it's been just absolute blazing pace coming out from Jardier here. Of course, Mikowski behind him, he's actually got the fastest lap of the race here. He's a 10th ahead of Jardier on the fastest lap, and you know, his consistency is roughly the same. His last lap, as they're crossing the time limit again here, was only a 10th slower than Jardier. I mean, we can see him there in the background still. That's him in one of those cars back there. I believe it's the green one, if I'm not mistaken. It's hard to tell with these Hondas because they're all Hondas, so it's not like, oh yeah, there's the Merc behind him, right? But you know, that's King, Mikowski right behind him there. King is only a second and a half behind Mikowski, so this, you know, 1-2-3 battle is still reasonably close, and we're now crossing, you know, 48 and a half minutes into this race. Jardier may have had a consistent time of it, but this race, as you kind of mentioned earlier, George, you can't count your chickens before they hatch, and this race ain't over yet. Again, we have the top 5 drivers not having made their pit stop yet. Cesarca and Rakia, 7th and 8th, not made their pit stop yet. Manu has back in 6th place. He is currently the first position that has taken his pit stop. Of course, I don't think that he will make up quite enough time to get back up into the top 3 once these guys make their pit stops. He's about a minute or so behind, if I'm not mistaken. But he's going to potentially make up a couple positions here, Manu will, and get back, you know, around that area where King is at. We're just going to see what happens when King makes his pit stop here. You know, did Manu get fast enough out of the pit? Has he been able to avoid the lap traffic now that he's out on his own? And we've got about 10 minutes remaining. Be interesting to see how these guys make their pit stops. Jardier is not fighting with too much lap traffic here. He's just been able to stay consistent, so I think it's in his best interest to just stay out as long as he can and just keep consistent, keep racing. His last time was very fast. It was a 29.784. So, you know, very quick by him, and he's just able to stay consistent. As we're now back to Lawrence fighting Stephen Key. And we do see Lawrence with a 5-second time penalty. Stewards did decide that for forcing the 85 car off the track earlier. And Lawrence actually just going to have to let him go by. I believe that was Stephen Key behind him, who is now in front of him. That was just... I don't know if Lawrence made a huge mistake coming off that last corner or not, guys.
Well,
but
no. I you know what? I don't even think Lawrence even wanted to fight that there. I think you know, he's happy to just chase down on a car that maybe has a penalty there. It did look like he just pulled over to the left side of the track and let him by. So it must have been something strategic coming out there from Lawrence. As we look back on Dedek's number 48 NSX here, as he has Messiah, the number 1, holding down 10th, chasing down, trying to get himself up the order. Both of these cars have, of course, pitted, so none of them are going to go into the pits. It will be a final 9-minute dash of racing for these two at Zolder. Messiah trying to throw Dedek off with a change of line coming in. Big Tokyo drift coming out from Dedek coming into T1, but does manage to keep it neat and tidy and hold off Lloyd Messiah a little bit more, but it does look like Dedek is starting to feel the pressure of the driving coming out from Messiah here, Thomas.
Yes, absolutely fantastic stuff. He's managed to bring himself so close to Dedek. I think they did have a bit of distance between them previous in the race, and the fact that he's managed to speed up enough in the absolutely, as I say again from the first race, fantastic red car as he jumps the chicanes, somehow managed to keep the car under control as he goes to one of the fastest corners on the track. We saw King actually slide off on the wet as we watched Dedek and Messiah go nice and peacefully into the second chicane as they come up to, as I say again, the most exciting part of the circuit. George, I believe you are absolutely wrong. As they come towards the slowest corner on the circuit, as actually Dedek slows down his car more than usual, brings it to the apex. He's being a bit strategic where he places his car, not so much chasing the 2 cars ahead. He knows they have a pit stop within 3 seconds of them, as I believe we watched Saka in 7th place head into the pit lane. Might be able to see a P come up in a moment. In fact, that was Rocha into the pits now, so they're going to get a free pass. Saka in 7th place is going to be another free position for those, as I've just seen King now is in 6th position. He has lost that place to Manu, so after battling for that position for I think 45 minutes or 40 minutes of the race, Manu is finally ahead. So stopping early was definitely what he needed to do, as Messiah and Dedek are now up to 8th and 9th place, number 48 and number 1 respectively, as I believe they are coming up to Saka ahead of them. Can't quite see the number on that RGN coloured car as they come again to the first chicane. That is
That's a
Dedek
back marker, by the way.
Okay, that is a buck marker, so hopefully that car will get out of the way, as it does nice and cleanly. And I believe that Messiah actually tries to have a look so he can go up on the inside, doesn't quite realize there's a back marker, then has to quickly tuck it back in before he ends up hitting it. That can be a really dangerous part of motorsport when you're overtaking lapped cars and you're trying to battle as well. You're not quite sure of what is going on ahead of you, and you have to make those quick choices. And he did it absolutely perfectly, being a pro driver, and no one got hurt. Of course, no one can get hurt in this Esports race, only Pride. And Pride plays a big part in these races in the 4-race championship. As Mike pointed out before, they don't have much time to make their pride known. As Messiah again is he's just kind of holding in the slipstream, just waiting for Dedek to make a mistake, as they both go for the wider line there. I've seen the fast drivers, they weren't really hitting the curb on the outside. It can unsettle the car, and although there are high curbs here, you would have thought they would have set the car up a little bit more to attack them, but that is not how you get speed out of these GT3 cars. It's getting them low to the ground as possible, and apart from the high curbs, you can run these cars pretty low. There's not much bouncing around, as we now look at Christian Manu in front of King. That's a sight that he's been wanting to see for as long time. His rear view mirror is actually not filled with King, but the fact that he can see him in the rearview mirror is something that is going to delight him, and even if it is not a podium position, it is something that he can be absolutely proud of, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was talking about right there, right? You need to play the pit strategy here, and of course, we didn't see their actual pit stops, but, you know, Manu did make up that time. He made up, you know, give or take about 5 seconds. That's exactly what he needed, like you just said, Thomas, and, you know, we've been talking about that for 40 minutes with these guys. King now having to make the fight, as we're now crossing into under 5 minutes remaining here. That is give or take about 4 to 5 laps left here at Zolder, depending on how the leaders cross the line. We have seen Jardier make his pit stop, currently back in 3rd position. Mikowski does have his pit stop. Weitzel ahead does have his pit stop left to go as well. Mikowski, I'm actually watching him come through the final chicane right now, so he's not going to pit this lap quite yet. But of course, he's only got a couple laps left to do, but he's got clean air right now. So I think at this point, he's going to try and just slap down as fast as laps as possible before he has to come into the pit at the very last second. Of course, you know, they can't pit on the last lap because, you know, they'll cross the line and get a 130-second time penalty, I believe it is, or it's a DSQ, one of the two. Either way, he ain't going to do it. And he's going to have to come in within the next couple laps. We'll see if he can make up that time, same as Manu did against King, except against Jardier in his case. But, you know, Jardier is quick. I seriously doubt he was in the pits for very long, as we're seeing Mikowski pop some curves there. And now we're going to continue our whip around coverage over to Niles. And of course, that is a car 24 behind him. So that's Eastwood, actually. So it looks like they've made up a couple positions. They're going to fight and get on the inside here for Eastwood. He's just going to have to... Oh, actually, Eastwood bounced off the curb a little bit, went wide into the dirt, and he's actually going to have to go ahead and just brake a little bit there, and he's going to let Cesarca go back, or Niles, sorry, go back past, because he realized he was cutting the track a little bit. You know what? I'm not going to make the move like that. Let's let you go back by, and I'm going to try it in the next corner. He tries to go around the outside, just not quite enough room. And this is such a narrow track here at Zolder. It's really hard to make these moves, George.
Yeah, Saka going to be the biggest winner overall here, as Niles and Eastwood now will keep each other busy, hopefully enough for Saka to get himself up the road. He obviously holds down that P10. This will be the battle for 11th, which Kevin Niles defends over on Eastwood. The number 77 that we ride on board with comes down at the start-finish straight. So they come into the first left-hander, sorry. Getting my left and right a little bit confused. This is a tight and twisty circuit, especially when you're trying to think of it backwards. But yeah, Kevin Niles oh, the racing is getting even closer here from Eastwood, really mastering this fast right-hander section and making sure that he keeps himself on the back of that NSX in front of him for the run down the straight. Right behind, he's pulled out quite early. He's going to try and get himself onto the outside here for the game. He's going to try his best, both going side by side. Going to cut back in there. Does not want to get forced back out. Kevin Niles wasn't going to give the room there, and Eastwood could see it straight away. This is racing to the end. 1 minute 54 on the clock to go. You're not going to give up positions easily here.
Absolutely not. No, Eastwood and Niles, this is going to be a fight we're going to see for the next 2 laps because, guys, that's about all we have remaining. And, of course, I'm looking at Mikowski right now on my camera as well. It looks like he's going to be coming down the pit straight at the moment. We're going to see if he's going to dip into the pits, and he is. So we're going to see what happens with that here briefly as we're still watching Niles and Eastwood. We're going to flip back over and watch these guys come down to the final chicane, and Niles gonna go defensive. Eastwood not gonna be able to get it done there, but he is right on the bumper. I don't think there's an inch between those guys. And of course, that's Woost in the background there. He is just waiting. You can see, you can smell the blood. He wants it. He wants to get up in there and get in that fight. He's waiting for the mistake to happen. He's done that multiple times this race. You know, made up some positions just by waiting for the mistake to happen in front. As the leader did cross the start-finish line for the final lap, that was Mikowski's. He's coming down the pit lane. As you can see, there's no room. There's not even any air there between them. I'm surprised Niles can keep a hold of that thing, or Eastwood can keep a hold of that thing without all that aero happening. And there's a little bit of a bump there, even possibly, as Eastwood's going to go to the outside, coming into the first chicane again. This is where we saw it last lap as well. This is not an easy corner to pass in. He's going to have to brake a little early, but Niles is actually going to go just slightly wide. Eastwood going to get the move done finally here on the last lap, and they're going to come into the second chicane, and Roost is making up the time as well. Now coming back onto Eastwood, he's going to go on the outside of this first chicane, or the second chicane in the first corner. Not going to quite get the move done yet, but these guys are going to keep fighting. About a half a lap to go here, 20 seconds or so left for this for this race, give or take. And I just want to mention, Mikowski actually failed to Jardier in the pit lane, got a stop-and-go penalty, so Jardier is probably crossing the lines here soon, gonna get the victory, it looks like, unless he makes a mistake. But Niles, Eastwood, and Woost here gonna be our fight of the last lap. Eastwood's gonna looks like he's gonna take it. Good braking into the final corner here. Woost is also not gonna get that move done, I don't think. As we're flipping over now to the 5th place position of Weitzel, he is gonna actually go wide, and that's gonna slide somebody past him. I actually don't know what car that is past him, but that's Vincent Airbich there in the background, not in this fight as well, because he's a couple seconds back. But this is Weitzel and the deck, actually. Thank you for that, Simon. The deck getting the move done on Weitzel, and they're about a half a lap left here for this. Leader has finished the race. Jardier crossing the line in first position, as George expected him to today. Here he is, going to go on his victory lap, and Mikowski is making his stop-and-go penalty. Unfortunate for him, he's going to fall down quite a bit down the order. Manu going to take the race from King. Excellent pit strategy by him, following that up and going to take a couple positions ahead. They're now in second and third position, thanks to Mikowski, both of them getting the podium that they were fighting for. Though I'm sure King there, George, would have loved to have that second position, but you know, unfortunate for him, a little bit of a pit strategy error potentially on his end. He's going to fall down to behind Manu for this second race here at Zolder. Awesome racing here for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there, working out. You know, King was holding off on Manu. It didn't look like Manu could get things done, but Manu making things count at the end, as we see the deck securing 4th, Witzel 5th, Airbridge in 6th, Messiah in 7th, Rubis comes across in 8th, and this is just dropping Mikowski down the order. Of course, he's got that penalty added to the end of his time. So Saka goes across in 9th. Mikowski, who had such a great race from 2nd, is just leading positions here, Thomas, at the end.
It's absolutely horrendous for it was second placed car, and sadly he left the strategy too late, and if you make a mistake, there is no way that you can make it any better, because you cannot perform a penalty stop or any form of penalty, including a drive-through on the last lap. You will get the max time of penalty on top of the penalty you already have, and that pulls him right down after an hour race to 13th place. So let's take a look at the grid order now. So of course, Jardier taking the win with the number 3 car. He completed 40 laps and total time was 60 minutes and 44 seconds. So not too much more time after the hour. Absolutely dominating race. Second place with Manu in the number 7 car after battling in the 3rd place King with a tremendous play with strategy. King only being 0.6 behind. Dedek in 4th place in the number 48. Weitzel in the 199 5th. 6th is Urbreach in the number 12. 7th is Messiah in the number 1 car. That was some great racing there with him. Rubies in the number 8 car. Didn't really see too much of him that race, but he managed to silently bring the car up without much contact. Zaka in the number in 9th place in the number 818. Eastwood in the 24 finished in 10th place and had a great battle with the number placed 11th car Niles. If you want to know how to attack and defend aggressively but fairly, watch those guys race. That was absolutely fantastic. 12th place was the brother of S. Verst. You kept calling him Wust, but I think it's Verst. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out afterwards. But he got 12th place in number 99 car. 13th place was Makowski with the horrendous penalty of plus 60 seconds. Plus he went down the pit lane, so that is 13th place for him. 14th is Koi in the number 26 in the number 26 car. In the number 85 is 15th place of Rochia. Unfortunate race for him, had a few contacts, but great racing nonetheless. 16th place is Worst, the number 45. In 17th was Lawrence with a bit of damage at the end and a penalty, couple of contacts. The start of a good race ended badly in the number 171. Number 221, Vargas finished in 18th. 19th was Zeman. 20th was Lamas. 21 was Earl. In 22nd was Lavender. Again, a great start, but not a great finish. 23rd, Richter. 24th, Luis Andrea. 25th, Hannah. Again, great start, not a great finish. 26th, Mame. 27th, Mazdo. And I believe we had one did not start, and that was Bram Biller. Over to you, George.
Yeah, Brambilla had a little bit of an issue on the grid. It sounded like earlier he was not able to spawn on the grid, unfortunately for him. So I know we've had a little bit of bugs the past couple days. Obviously, with the patch that went out Friday, if anybody wasn't paying attention, there was a little bit of an issue with the grid spawning bug. It seems to be mostly worked out for the race. We only had one person today, but it is what it is with that, and we will be back tomorrow, I believe, with the NSX Pro-Am Cup. And George, I believe you are going to be back in the box tomorrow with Thomas at that, right?
Indeed, it'll be me, George, and Jesse, and of course Simon back on cameras. Simon again doing a fantastic job with catching all the action. There was too much action to kind of talk over there. I got stumbled over my words, so apologies for that. But it hopefully should be much of the same again tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, awesome stuff there, guys. I mean, that was an absolutely awesome race. Yeah, again, we'll be back again same time tomorrow. So about 8 p.m. BST will be live with the Pro-Am Cup. So again, it's the Honda NSX Pro-Ams tomorrow, and then next Monday we have the AM class of the Honda NSX as well. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was an absolutely awesome race, wasn't it? Lots of action going on. Considering we had a lot of rain during the practice there, we didn't have anything through the qualify or through the race itself, which was a bit strange. But I mean, I guess that's the throw of the dice, isn't it? I guess anything can happen. But anyway, thanks again, guys, for coming along to watch, and thank you for the follows. Really appreciate that all happening. And we will see you again tomorrow. So thanks again, Fabian. Thanks again, George, Mike, and Thomas there in the comm box with me. So thanks again, and good night, guys.